spawning enemies. So in this game, I'm going to have this car that moves left and right, and it will eat these little stars, which give it points. When it eats enough stars, it'll move back up, and then I got these little bullets that come at it, and when the bullet hits it, it will knock the car down. So there, I can make a new bullet, and the bullet hits the car. So I have the interaction working. I can create bullets on my own. I can create stars successfully. All those interactions work. And I guess a key thing to notice is that you can see this in my code. The bullet and the stars has some sort of constructor function. So I call this bullet function, and it builds the bullet for me. Similarly, I call this star function, and it builds the star for me. And each star has its own state that I'm keeping track of. Once those things are true, you could think about setting up some kind of spawning logic. So I guess there's two main ways you could do this. One of them is you can call a set interval, which will let you just create an automatic timer in JavaScript to do something on a timer. The other way you could do it is you could take advantage of an existing timer in your game, which is the update function. So in my game, for example, there will not always be stars, there will not always be bullets, but there will always be a car. So if you have some item that will always exist, probably the easiest way to think about it would be to tie the updates to that update function. So my car, either you could think of it as the add drawing or the update. This thing is going to run once per animation, right? So I could just, inside of that update function, call another function, and it might want to know step time and maybe elapse. So I'll call it update world, step time and elapse. And that's probably the easiest way to do this. I'm just going to create a new function, stick it in a drawing function I know is always going to run, and then I know is only going to run once, right? And then I'll create function update world. And update world, actually, I don't want to be inside my car constructor. That's going to be up out here. Update world, and it gets elapsed and step time. So if I have an update world like this, this thing is going to be running all the time. And now any kind of timer or that sort of thing that I'd want to build in, I could build in as a variable inside of update world. So for example, I could have some variables here like next star and next bullet. So then I could say, all right, if not next star equals elapsed plus, maybe I'll make 1 second after the game starts. And then I can say, if elapsed is greater than next star, which is say if enough time has gone by that we're past when it's due, we'll go ahead and we'll create a star. In this case, the x is a random thing, so we could say, okay, math.random times, and maybe actually be nice to have width here, so I'll make my car function hand my update world the dimensions of the world too. So now I have an update world which gets a width and a height, a step time, and every second it's going to go ahead and create a new there we go, a new star. Oh, there they go. Now you can see I messed up. This kind of thing can be a little bit dangerous. I'm creating stars kind of infinitely because I forgot to reset next star here. So here I then want to say new star equals elapsed plus 1000. This logic can be a little dangerous. So now 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. There's another new star, another new star, another new star. I didn't have to set up a bunch of separate timers. I just put it inside of this one update. So I made an update world function, which is going to run all the time. And if I want the bullets to come, I could do the same thing. Now maybe I also want to have a variable for star every seconds. And that would be, so now I could make it so that maybe when you go up a level, the stars appear more frequently or something. And then I could do a similar thing. Maybe I'll make the bullets come twice as frequently. Not next bullet. So I'm just using the fact that elapsed is basically just tells me how long the game's been going. So I've got a running count that's handed to this function, and I can just check constantly, okay, if elapsed is greater than next bullet, so the minute we go past when that timer is supposed to be there, we'll make a bullet appear at a random place, and here we go. We should now have new bullets appearing on a regular basis. The new stars are successfully showing up, which is good. My new bullets, it appears I did something wrong. You might have spotted over my shoulder already. I have not. Okay, I forgot to say elapsed plus bullet every time. So now I've got a world where these bullets are coming down on a timer, and the stars are appearing on a timer. And in this game, you get knocked down by the bullets, and if you eat enough stars, you get pulled up. And my goal is, of course, to go up and not down. Here, I'll get knocked down a few times just for kicks. Boom, there I go. Each bullet is its own object. A couple things to know. If you're dealing with spawning, you are kind of creating what's called a memory leak. So you might want to think through a way to recycle your bullets or a limit of the number of bullets you could have if you run into a problem with your game. We can use the remove, which is pretty good. It doesn't actually perfectly clean up. You do potentially have a list that's getting bigger and bigger. I haven't yet seen it be a problem in a game, but it could be a problem. All right, so now I have a game that just goes forever. And we're going to keep getting more and more bullets, and we're going to keep getting more and more stars. And if I wanted the stars to come more frequently or the bullets to come less frequently, so if I just change that, if that number is smaller, I'm going to get a bigger rain of bullets. If it's higher, I'm going to get a higher one. One simple thing I could do in this game is I could go now find the logic. For example, when the bullet hits, it could change the every time to be less frequently. So that could be a self-balancing game if I felt so inclined. So that's that way. The other way you could do this is with a function called setInterval, which makes its own timer. So JavaScript, you can make as many timers as you want. You might find that tidier. The way setInterval works is you just say setInterval, and then you give it a function to run, and then you give it a number of milliseconds. So that would be regardless of your game. It's just going to, every second, it's going to run a function. So for example, I'm going to make a star show up on the left-hand side. Star 10 just puts one on the left every second. Now, of course, we can't see the fact that stars are showing up every second because they're exactly the same place. Here, I'll make it a bullet instead. That'll make it more obvious. Now there'll be a bullet falling every 1 second at 10. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. We can see those are perfectly regular. So I've got two styles of timers. This setInterval one, you might find that actually easier. Maybe that's the better way to go. One downside, that setInterval is potentially another piece of memory you have to keep track of, but you don't want to set a bunch of intervals, but that would work. I mean, you can set as many intervals as you want. It just gets harder to keep track of. So in this case, I just create one set interval there, and then I could create another set interval, let's say for stars. Random times 200. I'll put them on the left-hand side. Oops. If you don't give it a time, it just does them as quickly as it can, so that's why that's just overwhelmed the computer there. Here's an interval. One difference, these set intervals will run whether or not the computer is drawing this, whether or not the game is sort of running or not. So if I click away from the tab, for example, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and come back. There's a whole bunch of them piled up right there that were all created at once, but the times didn't update. So you could see the creation function ran in its own logic. So that's one reason I don't recommend the set interval. I think it's a little cleaner if you have an object that's got an update running to just put it in there and update because your game already has functions that run all the time. Now remember, this update world I tied to the car because I know in my game there's always one and only one car, so that's only going to draw once. If I put that same function, let's say I took that update world and I called it in the bullet, well, then I'd be running the update function, not once per 60 seconds, but I'd be running it once per bullet or once per frame, once per bullet per frame. So that's obviously much worse, and you're not being predictable anymore. So this method only really works if you know you've got some object that's running on a timer that's reliable. You could also, if you didn't want to tie update world to the car, you could just call game.addDrawing update world, and that would work fine. Actually, let me do that. That seems a little bit cleaner. So here, I'm going to get rid of that. Now it's no longer updating at all. And then I'm just going to add to the bottom here, game add drawing update world. So add drawing just says draw something every frame. It doesn't say it has to be a drawing. So if you want something to run on a timer and you want to know how often that's going to run as often as it can, it'll run all your update logic. That's a nice clean way to handle that. So add drawing update world will just add another thing that happens on a timer. In this case, the thing that happens on a timer is it's generating new bullets and new sprites. All right, hope that's helpful.